This video is going to talk you through all the skills we need for our quiz. If you have been absent, it's a great way to get caught up. If you've been present, it's a great way to get some extra practice. So one of the things you must know how to do is how to plot a point. The things kids struggle with are keeping the X and Y in the right order. So you might want to put that in your notebook. So if you're asked to plot the point X, Y, where X is 8 and Y is -3, you would identify your x-axis and go over 8 on the x-axis and then go down 3. Then you plot your point. That's the point 8, -3. So pause this video if you feel comfortable after the first one and try this one. Otherwise, listen along with me. Plot the point 0, 3. So that's our x and our y. When there's a 0, sometimes people have a little trouble. So 0, 0 is right at the axis where they cross. And our x's, you'd go one to the right to get a 1. So you just stay right where you are to have a 0. And then your y is your up and down. So you would go up 3. That's the point 0, 3. That's the first skill. The second skill is we have learned that slope means rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. So when we're talking about slope, we're talking about a line that could have a positive slope. Remember, we read from left to right. So it would go up. We could have a line that has a negative slope. I should draw that person a little higher up in the air. So if we have a negative slope, reading from left to right, we're going downhill, and that would be negative. So notice that this says a slope of 4. That means it's positive. 4 is the same as 4 over 1 for the purposes of our slope because it's rise over run. This week, we learned something called the y-intercept. Intercept means where it crosses. So the y-intercept would be on the y-axis, and it crosses at 4. So that is your actual starting point of the line. So you start there with a y-intercept of 4, and then you use the slope to tell you what to do. You rise 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you run 1. Some kids also like to make another point here, and they say, well, I'm going to go down 4, and when I go down 4, instead I go to the left 1. So the computer program will connect things for you, but I'm not on a computer, so I need to connect it myself. With a line, we put arrows at both ends. So that's when they tell you the slope and the y-intercept. So this one is similar. Recall that we have a positive slope, starts low and goes up high. A negative slope starts high and goes down low. So we have been given a negative slope. Also recall slope is rise over run. So our y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is -1. So you would start with a point right here. And our slope is -1/5. So this is written as -1 over 5. You could also write it as -1 on the top over 5. You'll never see a negative on the bottom. So we start at -1, and then we're going to go down 1 for our rise because it's a negative slope, and to the right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could also go up 1 and then go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I'm on a device where I have to connect my lines myself, I like to have 3 points. It makes it a little easier, but the computer program only puts 2 points for you. Notice it's a downward slope, so it goes with our negative. We read from left to right, so you can imagine looking downhill. Now, it's important to know that the letter representing slope is M. The letter representing the y-intercept is B. So we're moving on. Another skill that we have learned is we could be given an equation in this form. Every line follows the same equation, which is y equals mx plus b. M is our slope, B is our y-intercept. If you don't have this in your notes, please pause to put it in your notes. Remember, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So the steps for doing the problem are always the same. On your paper, even if you're using a computer, write down y equals mx plus b, and then put the equation right below it. Y equals 1/5 x minus 1. Now I'm going to switch colors so that you can see that I'm going to circle this right here, and notice the generic version is plus b, but we have a minus 1. That means my y-intercept, or my b, is minus 1. That's where I start. Notice that my slope is the number in front of the x value. Remember that slope means rise over run. Well, we have a 1 on top and a 5 on the bottom, so we're going to rise 1 and run 5. It's a positive slope. You see that we're going up. Imagine that person standing down here and looking up. Even because we read from left to right, that does not mean we don't still put arrows on both ends. We would include arrows because a line goes on forever. So that would be the equation y equals 1/5 x minus 1. Let's other. This time we follow that same practice of y equals mx plus b, and we layer that equation right underneath it, y equals negative 3x plus 3. So that same process, you're going to circle your b. So my b is the positive 3, so I would put a spot there. That's where I start. My slope is negative 3. So here we have a negative 3. It's maybe useful to say, oh, that's really negative 3 over 1. It's a rise over a run. And when it's negative, we know that the slope is going to look like this. It starts high and goes down low. So we're going to go down 3 and to the right 1 to make that next point. If we prefer to go up 3, we would then have to go to the left 1 to make it look like a downhill slope. Our last thing we learned yesterday, and these are the equations of horizontal and vertical lines. So one thing I want you to notice about this line, there are special cases, is that every single point on this line has the same x-coordinate. Identify what that x-coordinate is, and I think you can tell, I'll just pick a point here, that x-coordinate would be negative 5, and the y that corresponds would be 3. There's another one where our x is negative 5 and our y is 7. The y's are going to be different for every point, but that x will always be the same. So our equation is simply x equals negative 5. We're saying we don't care what the y is, we know that the x is negative 5. And our last one is a horizontal line. It's also a special situation. So we have all the points where the y value is the same. The y value in this case is 3, so you would say to yourself, well, we could check those x values if we want, 4, 3, negative 6, 3, etc. Notice that the y value is always 3, so we would say y equals 3. It is another special situation. So that is every skill that we have learned this week. We have practiced them, we have review on them in Delta Math, and then we have our quiz.